In this video, I'm going to go over the source chart assignment for you. It is in the research folder, and we're going to go to assignment materials folder. This is where you'll find everything that's assigned for this unit of study. And the source chart is something that's required for every student who takes English 111. It's a way for us to help you work through your scholarly research. I do have another video on how to conduct the scholarly research, so I hope you'll watch that. I do expect that you use the JCC database to collect your scholarly research. The source chart is a way for you to organize your research, and then you can always go back to the resource chart and utilize it to write your paper. A lot of students say that it helps tremendously to write the paper using the source chart. So the essay requires a minimum of 3 scholarly sources. So you'll have 3 in this chart, and you'll do everything from citing the work, you'll summarize, you'll identify what type of scholarly resource it is, you'll paraphrase some materials, do direct quotes, you'll do all sorts of things with the source, and it's guided so that that helps you kind of go through the research and not sort of get lost in the muck. A lot of times when we research, it's just so dense with information, and so the source charts helps you organize everything, and then you can rely on it to write your paper. Now, years ago, I had a student who wrote her paper directly from the source chart, and then she sort of did a paragraph for each source, and she didn't utilize the sources correctly in the essay. So make sure that you watch the video on how to write the essay for the research assignment. I have some tips in there on how to organize and how to put it together. You do not have to go in the same order as a source chart when you write the essay. You just will pull what you need from the source chart. The other thing I want to say is with the source chart, you are showcasing 3 scholarly sources. When you go to write the paper, by that point you may have gathered some more research, and that's okay. You do not have to use all of the sources in your source chart. I don't have any kind of guidelines or rules about that. You could use all of these sources, you could use one, or you could use none, because this is just a stage in the writing process. So you're going to gather these 3 scholarly resources, and then hopefully they make it into the paper, but sometimes you find better ones along the way, or something doesn't quite work, but they're there for you to use. So, choose wisely with what you use on the source chart, but there's no rule of how many of those have to make it into the final essay. So again, you are required to use the JCC databases, and I do have a video for that on how to use the library databases. Okay, so notice here that we have a sample of the chart here. I'm going to show you an image of the blank chart in just a second, but for right now, I want to point out that the chart that you will be doing for your grade only has 2 columns. This example chart here, it has 3 columns because the middle column is instructional. So with each line, you have a middle section that explains what you have to do for that. So if we look at the first thing here under criteria, it says MLA work cited citation for the source. Then there's a link and an explanation of what to do with the chart. One thing I want to point out is this semester we did change textbooks, and we no longer use the little seagull. So there's a reference to the little seagull here. The chart needs to be updated. This is a departmental chart that we use, but you can use the sources that I have given you with the JCC links and the JCC and the resources that I've given you for MLA formatting. You can also link to the Purdue OWL through this chart, and it'll give you citation help. If you use a citation generator, that's fine, but you still need to check behind it, because 9 out of 10 times the citations that are generated from a citation generator are not correct. And this happens often, so just be careful with that. And then this is what would be with yours. You would have, and make sure you have the hanging indent there, you would have the citation to show that this is the MLA citation for this work that I'm reviewing. Next, you're going to look at the source genre, and you're going to show what type of source it is. In this case, this is a newspaper article. It might be a journal article. It could be a website. There are lots of things that you could pull as a resource. Next, you're going to identify it as scholarly, popular, or trade. I will tell you, if you choose a popular source, it needs to be of high caliber. It needs to be credible, and it doesn't need to just be some website from somebody's, whatever, like general website. The reason why we allow some popular research is because institutions like Harvard, Yale, Duke, they have websites. And so sometimes people will pull credible articles from those types of websites. It could also be a credible company or government site that you find that works. But I do not want to see all popular research in the chart. I would say maybe one might be okay if it was very credible and substantial. The rest should be scholarly because you're trying to show that you know how to use the databases. Again, I have a video for that, so you can watch the video. It's with all the library resources that you can use. After you identify the type of source, you're going to evaluate it. So what you want to do next is you want to kind of do a sentence or two to explain kind of a blurb or a general statement about what this source is. So here it says, according to the New York Times, and that should be spelled out, the author is a best-selling author and Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter for the New York Times who focuses on science, technology, and the impact of heavy technology use on behavior and the brain. So that kind of gives us a main idea from the work. This makes him qualified to write on his topic, and then it also shows that the New York Times is a well-respected publication. So when you're evaluating the source, you're trying to show your evaluation of why it's credible, who wrote it, where it was published. You're sort of defending the quality of the work. Next, you're going to do a summary sentence, just one sentence. So here in his New York Times article, attached to technology and paying a price, Matt Reichtel describes several negative effects of the constant use of technology. So short and sweet, but a quick little generalized statement about a summary of what the source is. Now, for each source, you're going to pull two quotes, and you're going to do the same thing with the quotes. So here we see quote number one, and all you have to do is just copy and paste the quote in with the quotation marks. If it were me, I would go ahead and do the in-text citation. And the reason I say that is because you're going to need that. If you use that quote in your essay, you will need the in-text citation. So I would suggest going ahead and putting the in-text citation in with the quote so that you don't have to look it up later. So you're going to need the page number and the author. So put that in there. That way you have it. It's already done. After you do the direct quote, you will paraphrase. So you'll look back at the quote and then you'll write it in your own words. So here, working on multiple tasks at the same time can compromise our ability to focus on just one. But that's what that quote means. So you've just identified what it means. Next, you're going to show how to integrate a quote into the text of the essay. I know in high school, a lot of times they allow you to drop in a quote without any other phrasing. That's not allowed in college or academic writing, and it really shouldn't be in any kind of writing because you don't just drop in a quote with none of your own phrasing. So with this, we're having you practice how to integrate a quote with introductory phrasing to introduce the quote properly. So when we see this quote, you couldn't just copy and paste it like that into an essay. You would have to include introductory phrasing to properly write in with the quote into the essay. So notice here, according to journalist Matt Reichtel, and then the quote. Avoid making a tag at the end of the quote, he said. our Matt Reichel said. First of all, he didn't talk, he wrote, but really, in general, you put the phrasing in front of the quote, and it's an introductory phrasing into the quote. All right, next, we're going to synthesize the quote. Whenever you synthesize something, you combine the two things. So we're trying to show how this quote is in line with the topic that we're researching. So here, you're almost defending it because you're trying to tie it together with the research project that you're doing. So here, it's written, it provides evidence that seemingly inborn traits like the ability to focus might, in fact, be produced by technology. Technology doesn't just define the era, it defines the people living in that era. So this, generally when you synthesize something, you're sort of explaining it, you're tying it together. So to be a good, effective writer, you want to set up the point. I often use the ICE method, introduce the point, and then you're going to cite it, meaning you bring in a quote or something direct from the source, and then you're going to explain it, which is sort of a synthesis of your tying it together. So we're having you do all these pieces, and honestly, many students have told me that once they write the essay, they just go back to this chart and just pull information and then just sort of build their essay from this chart. And I think that's probably the most effective way to write your essay because you're putting so much work into this chart. Now, again, with the same source, you'll just rinse and repeat. Do the same thing over again with another quote. After you do that, you're going to write a source paragraph, and this is where you annotate the source. So what you do is you're going to want to set it up with sort of an introductory sentence to explain what the article is, where it's published, who wrote it, and the main idea. You're going to give some summary of the source. After you do that, you want to analyze it a little bit. You want to go in and make some statements about the importance of the points made in the source, and you kind of want to evaluate the important parts of that source that you want to showcase. So in this case, probably about here, the student is analyzing and evaluating. They say our ability to focus is being undermined by bursts of information. That's a quote. This implies that seemingly inborn traits like the ability to focus might in fact be produced by technology. So we see some evaluation there. Lastly, we're going to synthesize. So when we go sort of to the end, we're trying to sort of sum it up and show the purpose of the source. So humans may have needed to pay attention to potentially fatal interruptions at one time, but today interruptions are often detrimental. So this is a fully annotation of the source, and you're going to summarize, analyze, and synthesize in this paragraph. Really, you could go back to the chart and pull some of that information in and just further explain it. All right, so with the source chart, you're going to do what I just explained 3 times with 3 different sources. And for each source, you're going to have 2 quotes. I'm just going to open this up really quickly just to show you what the source chart looks like that you'll be filling out. It will appear just below the source chart that we just went over in the video. So let me get it a little bigger on the screen. So notice that the first column tells you what to do, and then you have space to put the information here. So use the chart that we just went over that's in Blackboard as your guide, and then you're going to turn this source chart into me for a grade. Again, it's going to have 3 sources, and each source will have a citation, it'll have identification in it, it'll have summary, analysis, and synthesis, and then you'll do a paragraph for each one. So everything's kind of times 3. Each source will have 2 quotes. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I look forward to seeing your research.